Okay, let's move on now to talk about the Falcons coaching search. Another morning, joined by Maria Martin from our sports team. We're just going to keep you on retainer. Thanks for being here.
Let's do it anytime.
I mean, another big morning because I saw the news overnight about John Harbaugh potentially going to the Giants. You warned us about this yesterday.
I did.
I mean, do you think this is a done deal? Should we lose hope for him here?
Yeah, I think you should, because this is all but signed on the dotted line, and this is exactly what the New York Giants had plans for all along. Maybe you should keep me on, because I've been telling you guys every single day what you should be paying attention to, and it was the New York Giants. They went full court press on John Harbaugh. They wanted credibility back in their building. This is a long-standing franchise of a lot of credibility itself, but they have lost that in recent years. And so I think getting John Harbaugh back in New York really signals that they are serious about the next wave of Giants football, which is unfortunate for the Falcons. I told you it was going to be an accelerated timeline because he was the hottest name of the coaching carousel out there on the market. There are other teams out there that were thinking, we need to get him in our building. We need to possibly not let him walk out. Of course, he did walk out and then probably contemplated it for a second, and they pulled out all the stops and made sure that John's going to be there in New Jersey for a long time.
Golden handcuffs, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, what I will say about the Falcons is Arthur Blank will be able to pay whoever, whatever they want. So this is an owner who is not financially handcuffed to anything when it comes to paying the next head coach. So that really wasn't the hurdle, I think, for the Falcons. And they were the first known team to interview him. Granted, it was a virtual interview. But for John Harbaugh, it didn't matter because you talk to the Falcons, you have your options. For him, he heard what the Giants had to say. Jackson Dart, their starting quarterback, was in there probably begging him not to leave, and it all worked out for them up there in New Jersey. But for the Falcons, there are still some really good options out there.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those options. Where does the search go from here? Who do you like on the short list?
So one thing I want people to keep in mind is that even if the Falcons wanted to, they cannot hire someone today. As you and I are sitting here and talking, they can't say, hey, we want Kevin Stefanski to be our head coach. Let's hire him. And the reason for that is the NFL has compliance rules. You have to check off a couple of different things before you're able to actually hire a head coach, one of which is the Rooney Rule, in which you have to interview 2 external minority candidates before you can even hire a head coach. There's only been one so far for the Atlanta Falcons that we know of, and they have announced 6 head coaching interviews, John Harbaugh being one of them. And so once they complete the Rooney Rule, then they can start to look at these candidates and think, who is our best option here? Now, the only one in that list that would maybe accelerate the process a little bit would be Kevin Stefanski, most recently the Cleveland Browns head coach, only because he's unemployed. He can take a job at any time he wants. The same cannot be said of some of these other guys that the Falcons have interviewed because they're still in the midst of football. So I think Kevin Stefanski could be the only one to accelerate the process, but remember, they do have to complete a couple of other interviews before they can even get someone in this building.
What about Mike McDaniel from the Dolphins? An intriguing name with what he was able to do with Tua down there in Miami. I mean, is he looking at Michael Penix Jr. and saying, maybe I could fix this situation too?
Yeah, I mean, possibly. Mike McDaniel's a quirky guy. He's a lot of fun to be around for sure. And this is also coming from, I'm a Dolphins fan. Everybody knows I grew up in South Florida, and it's hard to be a Dolphins fan, I think, in recent years. But Mike McDaniel did the best he could, especially in his first couple of years down there in Miami. Turned a lot of heads, obviously. Mike McDaniel's really intriguing to this Falcons opening, mostly because he was an offensive assistant here back in 2015 and 16. And it was really the turn of Mike's career and really what pushed him ahead as an offensive assistant. So he has a lot of connections to not only the city of Atlanta, but prior coaching staffs here in Atlanta, and Matt Ryan. Matt knows Mike very well, and Matt knows all of these guys that he's interviewed very well. That's something that we've talked about here on the stream the last couple of days, is Matt's relationships within the NFL really is going to help him throughout this process. Mike McDaniel could be really intriguing. I would lean more of a Clint Kubiak before Mike McDaniel, believe it or not. There's only a couple of coaches left that have head coaching experience. Mike is one of them. It would be Mike and Kevin Stefanski that are left on that list so far, but there could be some other names here coming within the next few days. But John Harbaugh, really the only head coach that I expect to be hired within this week.
Okay.
Now, next week, I think things are going to start to ramp up even more.
All right. Kubiak, by the way, offensive coordinator for Seahawks. So they're still in it, so not much interviewing he can do.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, he has officially interviewed with the Atlanta Falcons, but they got a game coming up this weekend. And what they've done in Seattle, very interestingly enough, Dan, so Mike McDonald, who's the head coach there in Seattle, he was a part of this last coaching cycle for the Atlanta Falcons when they hired Raheem Morris. He interviewed here in Atlanta, goes to Seattle, gets them an NFC West title, gets them a franchise record of 14 wins, and everyone's thinking, okay, that could have been a very good option for Atlanta. There's a couple of coaches in that cycle that were really great, but his coordinators are being poached. Atlanta has interviewed both of their coordinators, their defensive coordinator, Aiden Dirty, and their offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak is fantastic. He's got the number one offense in the NFL. He has really transformed what they've been able to do there in Seattle, and his offense goes a lot with what Matt Ryan believes offensively and schematically. So I think that's also a name you want to really keep your eyes peeled for.
You know, we haven't even touched on the GM search. I guess it's just not as sexy on paper, but I mean, is Matt Ryan making calls on that too right now?
Yeah, Matt is making calls on all of those, and he did say that it's kind of a timing thing, and I think most of that was because of John Harbaugh. And remember, John Harbaugh really had all of the cards in his hands. It wasn't the other way around for these coaching searches for every single team in the NFL. They look at John Harbaugh and they say, well, who do you want your GM to be? Now, obviously, in New York, it's a very different situation, but for Atlanta, that was probably a very intriguing situation for John, because he's calling Arthur and Matt and saying, hey, I want a say in who the next general manager is. And they may give that leeway to whoever the next head coach is. Matt's obviously doing those interviews first. But he did say he wants to Arthur Blank said he wants to land these planes, so to speak, at the same time, general manager and head coach, as best as they can, obviously. And they want them to be similar-minded. They don't want them to be best friends. That was emphasized when Matt was introduced as president of football. But they want them to have the same ideology, the same goals for the franchise. So, yes, it's not as sexy as on paper, for sure. Yeah. And that will come in the coming days as well. And one thing as well that I want people to keep in mind is when they were interviewing Matt Ryan for the president of football job and all these other candidates, there were 5 total, including Matt, they are also knocking out those general manager interviews at the same time. So some of those guys that were up for president of football are very much in the mix for general managers. Okay. So you'll see that here in the coming weeks too. But head coach really is the one that they really want to emphasize first.
Marie Martin, thank you so much from South Florida. By the way, you guys are a college football town now.
Yeah, I don't know what we are.
How are you feeling about it?
I don't know what we are. The University of Miami actually was my first job out of college, believe it or not.
Okay.
So when they played Ole Miss, which was my alma mater, it was like my Super Bowl, literally, because it was the first place that ever gave me a job in this industry. I was very grateful for it. We are a hockey town. We're a college town. South Florida sports is having a moment, and I'm very excited because, growing up, I got made fun of a lot for being a South Florida fan.
Look at you now.
Except for when the Heat went on their run. I just want to let everyone know that was a great one.
All right. Marie Martin, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.